Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levi, and today we're going to talk about Dana White's Contender Series Week 10. My friends, the season is finally over. It flew by. It's going down Tuesday night, live at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. We got 10 prospects competing for a contract, but this week is different than every other week. Reason being is the biggest favorite on this card is only like minus 170 as of right now. That's crazy. I mean, we're used to dealing with weeks with minus 500s, with minus this, minus that. Minus 170 is the biggest favorite. So, yeah, let's get down to business. Kicking off the card in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Canada's Mohamed Adu. He's 5-0, taking on Australia's Jonathan Micallef, who's 6-1. Currently, they got it. Jonathan Micallef, he's minus 150. The comeback on Mohamed Adu is plus 120. Yeah, it's an interesting fight because I do think that Adu is the better athlete, but Adu has a massive weakness in his wrestling. Like if you go back as recently as his last fight, just his last fight. And I know that the official result is he guillotined the guy in the first round, but dude, he got taken down at least 5 or 6 times by the guy, and sometimes with the same takedown over and over and over again. And but he was in there with kind of a regional journeyman that wasn't able to close the show. But these guys at the UFC level or Contender Series level, you give up easy takedowns like that, and I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Reason being is that you look at the other side at Jonathan Micallef, and that's all he does is shoot takedowns. This guy is a grinder, man. This kid Micallef, man, he's kind of awkward. He's kind of goofy. He's really tall for the weight class. It says he's listed at 6 feet on Tapology. I think he's a little bit taller than that. I think he looked like 6'2", 6'3" to me. Maybe his opponents were just a lot shorter, but I thought this dude was super tall. But like I said, he's a grinder. Maybe not the most exciting style in the world, kind of like a magnet to the crotch, but man, he's effective. And he goes out there, he takes guys down, he's relentless, he passes, decent ground and pound, but his submission game is where it's really at. The issue with him is on the feet. He does go for it, but he's very, very unathletic. And like I said, he's kind of goofy. So, I mean, I think on the feet, Mohamed Adu should be able to do his thing. The only issue is that I'm not sure how much of this fight's actually going to take place on the feet, because I think that Micallef can just take this guy down over and over. I'm not convinced Adu gets back up. I think Adu might get submitted, might get grinded out, might get ground and pound TKO'd. But either way, I'm going Jonathan Micallef to come out here and win this fight based off the takedowns. So, yeah, I mean, if Mohamed wants to win, he's got to stuff. But that last fight he had did not give me any confidence that he's going to be able to stuff as the level of competition increases. And Micallef, look, he's going to have issues when he can't get his takedowns, but I think he can get his takedowns Tuesday night. So for that reason, I'm taking Micallef in the first fight of the night. Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Leslie Hernandez. She's 4-1, taking on Julieta Martinez, who's 7-0. Currently, they got it. Julieta Martinez minus 130. The comeback on Leslie Hernandez is plus 110. And as I say that, the line literally just moved. Right now, it's minus 115, Julieta Martinez, and Leslie Hernandez is minus 105. So a lot of action coming in on Leslie Hernandez. And I have a feeling I know why. It's because there's not much available footage on Julieta Martinez at all. But what we do know about Julieta is, firstly, she's an undefeated Argentine. We know these Argentinian chicks, man, they've been emerging, haven't they? Look at Aileen Perez. Look at the girl that got that big knockout a few weeks back. I forget her name, but like, these Argentinian girls don't play, man. Like, they come from a regional scene where there's not much footage. They're fighting on gym mats, but then they come to the UFC and then they've been doing their thing, man. I mean, we only have that one fighter sample size in the UFC, but we got 2 if you include that Contender Series girl. And now we got a third one. Listen, you just got to keep it a buck. There's not much footage of her. Like, the footage I found of her was like her competing in like smokers with like headgear and shin guards on. I saw one MMA fight where she took this girl down and pounded her out. That was nice. And I saw some amateur footage. So I haven't really seen any recent footage of Julieta. If you guys got that footage, please post it so I can watch it. But what I have seen, I've liked. I mean, this girl's a finisher. This girl, it seems like she's mean. She's got a certain aggression about her, and she goes for it. And I think they signed her knowing that, like, I'm sure Sean and Mick have seen the tape. These guys, man, Sean and Mick, they're able to find the most obscure footage of these fighters that I don't even know where to find the half of. And then on the other side with Leslie Hernandez, like, okay, she's more established in the fact that she's actually fought in LFA. Her entire career has been in LFA. But when you look at the opponents she's been fighting, she's only fought one opponent with with a winning record. And it did go the distance, but all I'm trying to say is that what I do know about Leslie Hernandez is she seems like a jujitsu girl. Striking needs a lot of work, but she's pretty decent on the mat. I mean, we're not talking Mackenzie Dern level or anything, but I'm saying her style of fighting is she's like a jujitsu fighter. So there's so many unknowns in this fight. Like, I don't know what Julieta Martinez's jujitsu is like. I think Julieta's stand-up is probably better than Leslie, and I don't know if Leslie necessarily has the wrestling necessary to get Julieta down and submit her. If she does win, I think that's how it's gonna be. But yeah, it's just hard to really plant your flag when there's footage on Leslie, but she's like super green, hasn't fought a single person with a winning record. And we can tell that her jujitsu is decent, and that's what she likes to go to. And then on the other side, with Julieta, there's not much footage, but what there is, it seems like this could be a standout prospect. We just don't know because the level of competition has been so low. There's no recent footage, and now she's taking a big step up. So I kind of lean a little bit towards Julieta. I'm gonna go with the potential, but again, guys, please take everything I'm saying in this specific breakdown with a grain of salt because I don't have enough footage to really make a sound argument. I just don't. I have enough footage of Leslie, and I just wasn't that impressed. I mean, she's got okay jujitsu, trains at a good gym at the MMA lab, but like, so what? I don't think she's anything special. The question is Julieta or not? We really don't know. I'm gonna take a guess here and take Julieta Martinez, but let's see what happens. Let's tune in, man. Yo, if y'all got some footage on Martinez, please, please, please share it below because I want to know more about this girl. But yeah, I'll pick her in the meantime. Seems like there's more potential there, but let's see if that makes a difference. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Yadier DelValle. He's 7-0, repping Cuba. He's taking on Antonio Monteiro, who's 17-4-1, repping Brazil. And currently, they got it Antonio Monteiro -125. Yadier DelValle is -105. This is an interesting fight because you got a guy in Antonio Monteiro. I mean, coming in here with a 17-4-1 record, already super experienced on his regional scene. Comes from Nova União, same gym as Jose Aldo. This guy is super well rounded. I mean, on the feet, he's no slouch at all. But where it's really at with him is on the mat. It's obvious that this guy's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He looks effortless at times on the mat and on the feet. Like I said, no slouch at all. Definitely has his basics down there. And then with Yadier, he's more of like, okay, look, he's only 7-0, but this guy's a risk taker. Like, he came out in one of his most recent fights, just threw a flying knee, just like Jorge Masvidal off the jump. Doesn't care about giving up bottom position. I'd say that Yadier is probably the better athlete here, more willing to try stuff because he's got that confidence of the undefeated fighter. He even has a win over Michael Aswell, who the guy that had that fight with Bogdan Grad. A lot of people thought Aswell actually won that. So Yadier has beat some decent competition on his regional scene. But I think that Antonio might be a big step up for him. And I think it might be first L time on Tuesday night in Vegas. I just see Antonio, if he can get past the initial explosion and kind of, listen, this dude Yadier, like I said, he's going to take risks. He's going to try some stuff. And he's a very dangerous guy. And he's definitely someone that's going to be improving fight to fight. But if Antonio can kind of slow it down a bit, start to get his takedowns going, start to show off his jiu-jitsu, minimize the damage standing. I mean, who knows? Maybe he can even dictate the pace standing. Like, he is that experienced and that well-rounded. But just saying, if I had to pick one area that he'd probably call his strongest suit, it's obviously that black belt in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I'm gonna go Antonio Monteiro to come out here and beat Yadier, but I think there's a chance that both these guys are UFC ready right now. Co-main event of the evening in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Nick Piccininni, he's 7-0, taking on Luis Gurule, who's 9-0. And currently they got it. So they got it to pick them. It just depends where you look. I mean, I'm seeing minus 116 Piccininni, minus 114 Gurules in some spots, minus 115 on Nick, minus 105 on Gurule. So it just depends where you look. And in some spots, I'm actually seeing dog odds on Nick Piccininni. So yeah, that's on the fight odds tracker though. So some of those odds might not be accurate, but the bottom line is this fight is lined very closely and for good reason. So y'all that don't remember, Nick Piccininni, not only is this guy a former D1 wrestler, and by the way, his opponent Luis Gurule is a former D2 wrestler, but Nick already fought on Contender Series. He had a great fight with this dude, Jack Duffy. They were actually supposed to rematch on this episode, but Jack Duffy had to pull out the fight, which is very unfortunate because I actually kind of thought that Jack Duffy won that fight, and I thoroughly enjoyed that fight. I couldn't wait for the rematch. So on one hand, this dude Piccininni, like I said, he's got that D1 background. He trains at Fortis MMA, and he knows how to go out there and grind fights out. There's something about the guy in terms of it might not always be the most exciting, but the guy is a winner. And even in that fight with Duffy, let me actually pull up the stats. I'm actually curious what the stats say because I'm sure that Duffy was out voluming him by a significant margin. I mean, that's what I saw with my own eyes. Yeah, okay. So Duffy outlanded him on total strikes 125 to 71, and then on significance 76 to 32. But Nick, he got 6 takedowns. He attempted 16. Basically, what that tells me about Nick is that it doesn't matter how bad you're whooping this dude's ass. He is going to try as hard as he can to do whatever he needs to do to get the win. Like this dude, Nick, is a winner. And the good thing for him is that he's got the opposite body type of what he had to deal with last time. Last time he had to deal with a long, lanky dude with crazy output that could throw up these funky submissions. But now he's kind of dealing with like a smaller version of himself. Like this Gurule dude is very good. You can say a lot of the same things that you can say about Nick, about Gurule. Like he's really good at just dictating the pace of fights, grinding guys out. Earlier in his career, he was knocking a lot of people out, but as he kind of stepped up in competition, he showed that, you know, he doesn't need to just get these early knockouts. He can also grind people out. I think the difference between them is I think Nick has a bit better of a submission game, and I think that Luis Gurule probably has heavier hands than Nick. So, I mean, in theory, there is a path to victory for Gurule. Listen, this ain't, you know, y'all ain't putting on the singlet. This ain't the D1 mats no more. This is MMA wrestling now. If Gurule can come out here, stuff some takedowns, I think he does have the heavier hands than Nick in this spot. The only thing about it is I've also seen Gurule get dropped by not the best competition. Now, he's a very tough guy himself. Like he will push through it. And I've also heard lots of praises from guys like Brandon Royval. Shout out Brandon Royval cashing that plus 260 the other night against Tyra. This is his main training partner. He says Gurule beats his ass all day. So I'm definitely taking that into consideration. But it's short notice. Initially, I thought it was up a weight class, but nah, it's at flyweight. So so on one hand, you can look at it as like, well, Gurule, it's going against him at short notice. But on the other hand, Nick was prepping for a completely different opponent. He has had the notice. He's known about this date ever since his last fight ended because Dana said on the show, like, hey, I thought Duffy beat you, but what I'm willing to do is run it back on week 10. So Nick has known that this fight was going to happen or that he was going to compete on this date, whereas Gurule just found out. But that's not the be all end all. Gurule, maybe it's less pressure on him to come out here, short notice opportunity, because the kid definitely deserves it. Look, I think both these guys actually belong in the UFC right now. I just kind of see, even though Nick has a lot of work to do with his hands and his stand up and his overall game, the guy's a winner, and I think he's slightly more physical than Gurule. I might be off about that, but from my assessment, watching the tape, I mean, sometimes the regional tape, you can't quite tell the physicality, but from what I gathered, I think Nick is slightly more physical than this dude. But like I said, there is a path to victory for Gurule. You stuff takedowns, you outbox this guy. I think he's got a chance, but this ain't Jack Duffy. Jack Duffy had such an arsenal of strikes. He was like throwing front kicks, calf kicks. I mean, he showed. I feel like Jack Duffy showed the blueprint on how to beat Nick Piccininni. I just don't think that Gurule fights anything remotely close to Jack Duffy. Like Duffy showed that you have to have high output. You have to consistently leg kick. I don't think that Gurule has that same kind of output. I think that Gurule fights more like Nick. He's just like a smaller version of Nick. So I'm gonna go Nick here, but I think it's got the chance to be very competitive for sure. Main event of the evening in the middleweight division, we got Nick Klein. He's 5-1, taking on Heraldo Souza, who's 9-1-1. Currently, they got it. Heraldo Souza -170. The comeback on Nick Klein is +140. So I'm gonna just lay out the scenario for y'all. This is basically the picture I want to paint of this fight. Heraldo Souza is the explosive Brazilian with big power that is definitely an athletic advantage in this spot, taking on Nick Klein, who he's not the best athlete, kind of more of a blue collar dude that's probably deceptively strong. And early on, it could be target practice for Souza. Souza could also go out there and knock this guy out. The thing you got to be worried about if you're on the Souza side is if Klein can take this ass whooping up front and then he starts pinning him up against the fence, starts mixing in takedowns, starts just slowing the pace down of the fight and turning it into one of those grindy, grimy type fights. Like that's where Klein excels. So it's really a dynamic of two completely different fighting styles, body types. And let's see. I mean, I do think that Geraldo probably comes out here and gets a knockout. Um, but I mean, you do have to be concerned. Like this guy's only been a decision one time in 11 pro fights. Now, again, that's not his fault. You handled all your regional scene opponents accordingly. But all I'm saying is when you're taking on this dude Klein, who's like known for he's still out there late into that third round. He's gotten finishes deep into fights. He's also been finished deep in fights. So there could be the scenario that Geraldo's athleticism is just way too much for Klein, that even if he does, empty the tank early, he might still be physical enough to where it doesn't matter. But what I mean to say here is regarding Klein is you just have to be aware of you can't empty the clip against a guy like this because he's one of those guys that thrives off you start to gas and he gains any little bit of momentum and it snowballs into something big and he runs with it. And that's how he gets his wins. But all that being said, look, I definitely think there's holes in Geraldo Souza's game and it'll be exposed. I'm just not convinced it's going to be Tuesday night. I think it's going to be in the UFC. So I'm going to go Geraldo Souza to come out here, knock out Nick Klein, not Nick Hine. I got a funny story about Nick Hine here in a second. I got Geraldo Souza to come out here, knock out Nick Klein, get that UFC contract, and end this season of Contender Series with a bang. So funny story about Nick Hine, former UFC fighter Nick Hine, Sergeant Hine from Germany. So he fights Drew Dober in Germany, right? And he actually beats Drew Dober, I think via unanimous decision. And Drew Dober and Nick Hine run into each other at the after party. And Drew Dober actually meets Nick Hine's sister at the after party. And he ends up marrying Nick Hine's sister. So it's like, you kicked my ass, but now I'm going to go marry your sister. But yeah, I just thought that was funny because Nick Klein reminded me of the name Nick Hine. So now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for Contender Series Week 10? I mean, I think the fight to watch is that co-main event between Piccininni and Gurule. Like, maybe not in terms of excitement, but in terms of I think that these two are winners. I mean, they are 7-0 versus 9-0. Someone's always got to go. Both these guys are UFC ready right now. Both these guys do whatever it takes to get that dub. And someone's not going to have a donut next to their record on Wednesday morning. So let's see who it is. For that reason, Nick Piccininni versus Luis Gurule is my fight to watch. Who is my fighter to watch? I think that my fighter to watch, you know, I just said what the fight to watch was. I might be backtracking because that Yadier DelValle versus Antonio Monteiro fight, that's definitely one to watch. But I think my fighter to watch is Heraldo Souza. Listen, I know it's the main event, but this is the main event of Contender Series. So y'all can give me a pass for picking the main event. But I think this guy's explosive. I think this guy's got heavy hands. I think he's a exciting Brazilian that can do some fun things. He's got a tough test ahead of him. Like, you cannot gas out against this guy, Nick Klein, like I said. So let's see how he deals with this test, and all eyes will be on him in the main event. And for that reason, he's my fighter to watch. Well, my friends, we did it. It's going down Tuesday night at the Apex. Y'all can follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks, at Half the Battle HQ, on Instagram at Half the Battle Pod. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to throw down as much content as I possibly can. Shout out Meticulous for the amazing artwork and for editing the shorts and everything else. You're the man, the thumbnails, etc., etc. Your friendship. You know what I'm saying, dog? Thank you to the fans. Y'all are amazing. And I hope y'all enjoy the fights. And thank you very much for supporting me. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.